Hi everyone, welcome back to another paper theater build with me video. This one is a Princess Mononoke wood style. It's a large wood style paper theater, and this one's a 1 out of 5 diamond difficulty, meaning this one was super easy. In general, the wood ones are easier too because the wooden pieces are a lot easier to hold than the tiny little paper pieces. But also, this one is really large too, and just for dexterity, that's a lot easier. And also, this one I believe only had one piece of paper in it, and everything else was the balsa wood, so that's pretty easy to do. And they're usually not this large. Again, this is the large wood style one. It's not the premium one, but it's the next one up. And from start to finish, this whole build only took 28 minutes, which is pretty fast. Usually mine take about an hour to 2, just depends on the difficulty level. And so I think this one's just going to be a total real-time one. And the way I like to do these is above my working surface where you can't see, I have the layers in order from 1 to 6. I think that helps me with following the instructions, as well as if your workspace is big enough, just separating all the different individual pieces out to the side. And as you can see there, this one's actually 7 layers. I forgot also. And so when I saw the 7th layer, I was like, wow, this one's 7. Interesting. But as you can see, this instruction doesn't have a backside because it's so easy, so fast to do. And so this one's just going to be a full start to finish video, like I said. So I'm going to have some little low music playing, and I'll interject with some maybe helpful tips as I see fit. So I hope you enjoy this one. So voiceover me is already back in. So this particular one is actually only in Japanese instructions. Some paper theaters do come in English. So I can read some Japanese, but I didn't really know exactly what this said. So I'm using Google Translate, the camera option, to, as you can see, I've got everything on screen to show you what I'm reading here, which is talking about the transparent parts. It says, peel off both sides before pasting. And right before I pulled out my phone, you can kind of see, I was looking at this particular front shield piece. This paper theater is kind of cool because this one actually has a plastic layer in the front too, which is kind of nicer for the case of dust or things getting splashed on it. But I just wanted to double check what it meant with the instructions about the transparent shield. And as you can see on this plastic bit too, it's got some little squigglies along the edge, and that's how you know which one's the front or the back side, where it lines up with that first layer. So that's also important. And I highly recommend, if you do end up purchasing a paper theater with no English instructions, you can still definitely build it without English instructions. For the most part, they won't even have that red text where it has further information. The only text it really has is the layers where it says front or back side, and maybe it'll have a little close-up thing. But either way, you can use your Google Translate app, just take a picture, or just live time, you don't even need to take the picture, just hover over the text like I did there. And anyway, back to the normal build process. I don't typically cut out any of my pieces beforehand. I leave them in their little rectangular outer layer, because you can see at the top left where it says 1, that dictates which layer each piece is. And you can kind of see off to the side at the top right of my screen. Right now you see that one that has little cutouts in the middle, and it has a 3 at the top. I don't cut out anything before the instruction calls for it, because some of the pieces look so similar and they're so tiny and they get everywhere and it's hard to maintain. So it's really easy if you just leave everything as a whole piece until the instructions call for it. And with the wood ones, you can kind of see it just a moment ago. The little notches that come off, they come off very easily. You don't necessarily need a knife for that, but since it is wood, you might want to have a tiny grit sandpaper or something to just get rid of the little notch if that bothers you. Or you could do what I did, but that's not as safe. So I do recommend you use a fine grit sandpaper for this. And as you can see right here, I'm just trying to line up that little squiggly bit that's already printed on the plastic shield to match up the little guys' heads and then the little frame on here. And another tip that I do is I save the plastic that all the pieces come in, and I use that to just put my glue on, because you throw it away anyway. And so just use that, just regular normal school glue, by the way. It's paper, you know, it doesn't need to be anything intense or anything fine craft related. I got this from the Dollar Tree. You can just use Elmer's glue. And if you've seen some of my paper theater builds, or you're looking at this one right now, you can see that I do put more emphasis on gluing well, like the wood, because wood is a little bit, I guess, more durable than paper. But that being said, you really don't need a lot of glue, because these are such fine pieces, and just a little really goes a long way. Plus, you're not going to be like using this. It's just for display purposes. And so you could see there, I got some glue that when it squished a little bit. So you can see that on the front side. If you don't want that at all, just put the finest layer of glue. Or you could just wait till it dries and then peel it off the front. I never ended up peeling it off the front for mine. I think it looks totally fine. You don't even notice it. So I just left it there. And so again, follow the instructions. You can see I'm picking up the third layer now. It doesn't necessarily go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Sometimes some layers don't even have any pieces, especially if it's a wooden one. So just follow the instructions. And another, I guess, tip that you could see that I'm about to struggle with here is wood, you know, it kind of bows sometimes, and this is such a tiny piece that I'm gluing to, that once I get the glue in all the appropriate spots and everything, and I put the piece down, it's not really staying flat in order to dry well. So that's another thing that I also recommend having, is just tiny weights. It doesn't have to be a genuine weight. You can see I'm about to use my phone. So it can be anything flat to hold it down. Sometimes I use the bottom of the glue bottle. But I do think it is important, because like, even though this is like a tiny fun craft, I do think it's important to try to make things line up the best you can. And I picked it up to check if it still stayed lined up, and it didn't. So I was like, oh, I gotta try again. And the tinier pieces are a bit frustrating, so if the dexterity or if it's your first time is an issue, I do recommend going with a larger one. They have different size ones. But anyway, this is pretty therapeutic. The only thing I really pay attention to is front or back. And if you can't read Japanese, if you don't have the English instructions, the pictures are exactly what they should look like. So just pay attention to that. And it should be pretty fun and therapeutic and relaxing. And maybe listen to a podcast or stream your favorite show in the background. And I probably will stay silent now until the end, where I talk about putting it together, because that part's a little difficult. It is a lot easier on the wood and paper theaters to put each layer together. But I will tune out till then. So voiceover me is cutting back in now because I realized that all my pieces are done, and because this is paper or wood, it dries very quickly, so you can honestly start assembling it pretty much right away. And when you get to these pieces that hold all the layers together, it's important to note if they're different sizes. This one you can kind of see it's actually 6 pieces of 3 different sizes, a small, medium, and a large. And the instructions will make note of that too. But it's important that you keep that in mind when you are assembling the theater, because in this particular theater, the layers are pretty even, especially because it's wood. But on a different paper theater, it will make a world of difference. It'll sometimes even tell you this piece is for this particular corner. So just be mindful of that when you're working on yours. And a tip that I have, this is the exceedingly most frustrating part for sure. So it might take you honestly like 30 minutes just for your first time. Like, I'm looking at this video and it looks like it took me about 10 minutes maybe to get this fully situated. And this is an easier one too. But it's important to remember that all your layers go in the correct order, so refer to your instructions for that. And then what I like to do is, since I'm right-handed, I take all my pieces, all the layers in the correct order, facing the right way, in my left hand. And once I make sure the order is correct, and which I'm referring to the instructions, but you can't see that. Once everything looks all right and everything in my left hand, then I space it out accordingly to what the little edge pieces look like. So I suppose after that, and I'm just double checking here because this one, sometimes it's kind of hard to see the final results until it's all done. So, and it's important because you don't want to have all the corner pieces in and then start gluing and then realize, oh yeah, these layers aren't in the right order. But this is real time too, so you can watch me struggle with it real time. And I'm gonna cut out here again, but I just don't get too frustrated. I've done a paper theater with one of my friends before. It was his first one, and he had a really hard time with it too, and it wasn't the wooden one, because the wooden ones are thicker, they're easier to hold. So just be patient, and maybe also try to even everything out on the table just to keep your layers at the same height. That's probably the most difficult part because you have to space everything evenly and then put the pieces in. And I like to do the largest piece because not all the pieces hold every layer. So pay attention to that. And I try to do either the top corners or the bottom corners, just depending on each particular piece. And you can also see that tiny little arrow dictates it's supposed to be pointing towards the front. And I guess finally my last comment is, once everything is put in, frustratingly put in, I won't glue it until at least it's stable with several corner pieces in. So keep that in mind, and happy building, and I'm cutting out again now. You can see the last glued piece is taking its place, and my paper theater is done. I'm showing you from different angles. It looks really cool from the front. It's got the tiny little holes in the back if you have one of those lights behind it, so you can see a little bit of the sky. It's pretty cool. That's my dog SUV. Here I'm trying to show a little bit of like, wow, look, the lights behind it. It doesn't look so cool there, but you can kind of, depends on what your layout is. If you have it on a dark shelf, it'll look pretty interesting for sure. And the last thing I'm showing you is just the height in comparison to your typical paper theater sizes versus the one that they call a cube. And that's all. I hope you enjoyed this style video. I only plan to do one long full-length video for each different type of paper theater build, and I hope you enjoy that and hope you guys have a good one.